Footnotes from the Life Application Study Bible. Not much is known about these wise men. We don't know where they came from or how many were in the group. Because of the three different gifts they gave to Jesus, tradition has assumed that there were just 3 men on this journey. Tradition also says that these were men of high position from Parathia, near the site of ancient Babylon. How did they know that the star represented the Messiah? 1. They could have been Jews who had remained in Babylon after the exile and knew the Old Testament predictions of the Messiah's coming. 2. They may have been Eastern astrologers who studied ancient manuscripts from around the world. Because of the Jewish exile centuries earlier, they would have had copies of the Old Testament in their land. 3. They may have had a special message from God directing them to the Messiah. Some interpreters say these wise men were each from a different land, representing the entire world bowing before Jesus and fulfilling the prophecy that all the nations would come to him. These men were from faraway lands, recognized Jesus as the Messiah, while most of God's chosen people in Israel did not. Matthew pictures Jesus as king over the whole world, not just Judea. The wise men traveled many hundreds of miles to see the King of the Jews. When they finally found him, they responded with joy, worship, and gifts. This is so different from the approach people often take today. We expect God to come looking for us, explain himself, prove who he is, and give us gifts. But those who are wise still seek and worship Jesus today, not for what they can get from him, but for who he is. God reveals himself to those who seek him and rewards them with faith. Bethlehem is a small town 5 miles south of Jerusalem. It sits on a high ridge over 2,000 feet above sea level, where it can be seen easily. Bethlehem was the birthplace of King David. It is mentioned in more detail in the Gospel of Luke. Luke also explains why Joseph and Mary were in Bethlehem when Jesus was born, rather than in Nazareth, their hometown. The land of Israel was divided into 4 political districts and several lesser territories. Judea was to the south, Samaria in the middle, Galilee to the north, and Idumea to the southwest. Bethlehem of Judea had been prophesied as the Messiah's birthplace. Jerusalem was also in Judea and was the seat of government for Herod the Great, king over all 4 political districts. After Herod's death, the districts were divided among 3 separate rulers. Although he was a ruthless, evil man who murdered many, even in his own family, Herod the Great supervised the renovation of the temple, making it much larger and more beautiful. This made him popular with many Jews. Jesus would visit Jerusalem many times because the great Jewish festivals were held there. The wise men said they saw Jesus' star. Centuries earlier, Balaam had referred to a coming star from Jacob. Some say this star may have been a conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars around the same time. A variety of other explanations have been offered. But couldn't God, who created the heavens, have created a special star to signal the arrival of the sun? Whatever the nature of the star, these wise men traveled many miles searching for a king, and they found him. Herod the Great was quite disturbed when the wise men asked about a newborn king of the Jews, because 1. Herod was not the rightful heir to the throne of David. Therefore, many Jews hated him as a usurper. If Jesus really was an heir, trouble would arise. 2. Herod was a ruthless villain, and because of his many enemies, he was suspicious that someone would try to overthrow him. 3. Herod didn't want the Jews, a religious people, to unite around a religious figure. 4. If these wise men were of Jewish descent and from Parathia, the most powerful region next to Rome, they would have welcomed a Jewish king who could swing the balance of power away from Rome. The land of Israel, far from Rome, would have been easy prey for an eastern nation trying to gain more control, as Assyria and Babylon had done centuries earlier. Matthew reveals that both Herod and the people of Jerusalem were disturbed. When Jesus was born into the world, people immediately began to react. His presence did not soothe and comfort most people. Instead, it startled and disturbed them. In some, like the wise men, he awakened spiritual longings. In others, fear and insecurity. Things have not changed that much. Jesus still upends, stretches, and disrupts us, because God entered our world in person when Jesus was born. We dare not sit idly by, ignoring and rationalizing our inaction. We must acknowledge Jesus as the rightful King of our lives and join with him to build his eternal and just kingdom. The leading priests and teachers of religious law were aware of Micah chapter 5, verse 2, and other prophecies about the Messiah. Matthew repeatedly highlighted both their knowledge and their unbelief. The wise men's news troubled Herod because he knew that the Jewish people expected the Messiah to come soon. Most Jews expected the Messiah to be a great military and political deliverer, like Alexander the Great. They took their cues from scriptures like Psalms 2 and 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. Herod's counselors would have told Herod this. No wonder this ruthless man took no chances and ordered all the baby boys in Bethlehem killed. Most religious leaders believed in a literal fulfillment of all Old Testament prophecy. Therefore, they believed the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, as foreseen by the prophet Micah 7 centuries earlier. Ironically, when Jesus was born, these same religious leaders became his greatest enemies. When the Messiah for whom they had been waiting finally came, they didn't recognize him. Herod did not want to worship Jesus. He was lying. This was a trick to get the wise men to return to him and reveal the whereabouts of the newborn king. Herod's plan was to kill Jesus. Jesus was probably 1 or 2 years old when the wise men found him. By this time, Mary and Joseph were living in a house and intending to stay in Bethlehem for a while. The wise men gave these expensive gifts as worthy acknowledgment for a future king. Bible students have been seen in the gifts symbols of Jesus' identity and what he would accomplish. Gold was a gift for royalty, frankincense was a gift for deity, and myrrh was a spice used to anoint a body for burial. These gifts may have provided the financial resources for the trip to Egypt and back. The wise men brought gifts and worshiped Jesus for who he was. This is the essence of true worship, honoring God for who he is and being willing to give him what is valuable to you. Worship God because he is the perfect, just, and almighty creator of the universe, worthy of the best you have to give. After finding Jesus and worshiping him, the wise men were warned by God not to return through Jerusalem as they had intended. Finding Jesus may mean that your life must take a different direction, one that is open to his word and responsive to his leadership. In what ways has Jesus affected the direction of your life? If you haven't found Jesus, but you'd like to, what direction does your life need to take?